So let's talk about those fundamental issues. We know, like you rightfully mentioned, there are many fundamental and structural issues in Sri Lanka and its governance as a whole. One thing is state-owned enterprises and the bloated public sector. Those are some of the key issues that Sri Lanka is facing at present. What would an NPP-led government do differently, especially in terms of restructuring, like you mentioned, state-owned enterprises, reducing the public sector, making it more efficient? How would an NPP-led government address these issues through policies that will last for a long time, that will not be changed from government to government? Because that's another key reason where Sri Lanka is where it is, because one government implements a certain policy, the other government comes into power and it completely decimates that policy. So talk to me on that, Chathuranga.
So basically the policy should be agreement between people and the government. I am 40 years old, 20 years into probably voting, and I have never seen a manifesto has been implemented. So that's the problem. Right? Why? How would a policy will continue?
Right.
Now say that if we take, so we have put our policies, and I probably will explain. If we take power, and people would vote for that policy, and we will try to implement it. Say that we fail to implement it, and the people should vote for the next team to continue that policy. Na?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There should not be fundamental errors with policy, because the world has developed in one single way. So if I can tell you what NPP's policy is, globally, all the economies that developed since 1950, they've chosen what they are good at. They've decided what industries they should be doing. They decided what industries they can't do. And for the industries they can do, because these economies were small, state infused capital. State infused technology. State got them into the global markets through the ties that you can build. Very good example, South Korea. India has done it. Vietnam is doing it. Indonesia is doing it. China has done it. Right? What? Private enterprise doing the business. State is ensuring that they have the capital. They have the manufacturing inputs, and they have the ease of doing business, and also the government is supportive of creating trade agreements and bilateral ties, so that our products and services can go into different markets.
The state acts as a facilitator.
So I would come into SOEs. Why it is the developing nations need SOEs is to provide manufacturing support. So NPP is absolutely clear that we would play a pivotal role in energy, because we think the private oligarchies will not be able to give energy at lowest cost. We are very clear about it. So we want to play a part of it. It will probably not be 100%, but we will play a controlling stake in energy. And also we know that the private financial institutes will never work in the best interest of the nation. Therefore we will hold on to People's Bank and Bank of Ceylon, and we will also create 2 more development banks. This is, if you go into the development theories, these development banks India has, South Korea has, and Vietnam has. Why? Because low cost of capital is what the entrepreneurs need. For a simple example, we are apparel industry at 5 billion, we can't reach further. China is giving at 3% loans to apparel industry in China.
At present.
Technological transformation is happening. So that's how it works, right? And also state will facilitate, or state will play a pivotal role in the transportation, right? So why these 3 key inputs are very important for our industries to flourish. So that is the strategy of NPP, and we don't want to do industries through the government, right? But when it comes to certain strategic industries are interconnected, right? Now if you take Sri Lanka Telecom, it gives us a profit, plays a pivotal competitive role in the market, which is very important, because technology is a substantial factor for the growth of this nation. At this point as we speak, 80% of the children doesn't have access to technology, and you take the state institute out, and do you think the private institutes will go and give internet to the rural areas where there is no demand? It won't work, right? So an insurance corporation. So there are certain SOEs which are there to facilitate this growth, and those SOEs, namely 52 there, we would try our best to restructure. We would try our best to work with private sector and do joint ventures. Certain things government will hold, right? And we will use all these 3 mechanisms to restructure. Our proposition is not to sell and get some cash and figure out. That's what Ranil is doing. So there are some, we have very clearly stated the banking, the energy and transportation and essential goods. Government will intervene if the private market is not competitive. That is to induce competition only. And we don't have any interest of doing business and all those things. And private sector will do it, and Sri Lankan private sector has done it. The IT industry is private sector, apparel industry is private sector, bulk of the agriculture is private sector. tourism is private sector. Now even the ports and the trade, the export, the port related services are mostly private sector. So we are okay with that, right? So what we would do is restructure. And when you're coming to the question of bloated public service, we need to really understand this is a number game. And if you really take public service, there are a lot of gaps in public service also. Even we have 1.3 million people, state sector workers. Bulk of these state sector workers are the ones who has not even passed O-level, that has been given jobs by the previous regimes.
Yes.
As NPP, we are very clear, we will not throw people away. We will not sack anybody, right? Because it's not their fault.
Yes.
It's the people who rule, right? So it will take probably 3 to 5 to 8 years for us to right size this. We know it has to get right sized.
Yes.
But there are a lot of vacancies in nurses. There's a lot of vacancies in doctors. There are a lot of vacancies in the executive cadre which we will have to fill.
Yes.
So basically there will be a pace of from today to another 5 to 10 years, eventually this will get restructured, and we are very clear about it.
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on human capital, Chathuranga. Although we are constricted for time, I want to speak to you about brain drain in this country, which is currently a massive crisis amidst all of the other crises that Sri Lanka is facing. The NPP has championed a value and policy of appointing, of meritocracy, of appointing the right person for the right job. But with the mass exodus that we are experiencing in intellectuals, in capable and able young men and women living in this country, how can the NPP champion these values any further? Because we are losing capable and able men and women from this country who can restructure this country, who can develop this country and support the key sectors in this country. How does the NPP plan on addressing that issue?
So the current rule is making it difficult for us, right? That's for sure, right? But are we going to give up? No, right? Now, what the thing that if you would have seen the last 12 months, NPP has been roaming around the world. We have been creating enough public support from the people who has left the country, because we know when we are to build, the investment will come from Sri Lankan expats. We know some of the Sri Lankan expats will come back and work with us.
You're confident on that?
We are very confident on that, and people have pledged also. But I'm not banking on that. But still, there are a lot of people who are still here. If you put the right policies, right leadership, which organization has worked when the leadership is corrupt? Which private organization has succeeded in the world when the top management is corrupt and knowingly corrupt? I don't think it's going. So it has to come from top. As soon as we get power, we know within the current government structure there are enough good people who is willing to work. There are retired people as well who are willing to work. And even on the institutions, on the meritocracy, we have a lot of people who has left the country because the living standards are getting poorer and weaker because you earn and the government takes 36%. I mean, I'm talking about the the top notch of professionals, and government is going to take 30% of your income, and government is not providing you child education, government is not providing you health, government is not providing you public transport, so you are taxed heavily. In nutshell, a highly paid executive in Sri Lanka is now paying close to 45% tax. Why? You pay your income tax, you pay your 18% VAT on your consumption, and you pay for your children's education, you pay for health, you pay for transportation, and there's no safety.
Right.
Why would people live here? So as soon as we establish the rule of law, we think not even Sri Lankans, foreigners will also come. That's our vision.
Right.
Because the thing is, the global human capital is mobile, and we don't want to restrict it.
Right.
We are very clear Sri Lankans can go abroad and work, Sri Lankans go abroad and get educated. People who are educated in those countries can also come here if we don't have enough labor, right?
Certainly.
If we don't have enough labor.
Right.
So we are very clear about that, but we will continue to invest in education, higher education and innovation, R&D.
Right.
That's our strategy, because Globe is winning the world through IP, creating of new knowledge. And Sri Lanka is investing only 0.128% currently on R&D, whereas the developed nations spend 6% of their GDP, and the developing nations at least spend 3.5% on R&D. That's the problem.
Certainly very startling facts and figures that were brought to you by Chathuranga Abeysinghe, Executive Committee Member of the National People's Power. Today's topic of discussion centered around policies and polls, how important it is to have national policies in a country for the future development of the country, for the future generations of the country, where a certain government implements projects and another government simply quashes them and implements their own projects. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Thank you very much, Chathuranga, for joining me on Face to Face this evening. Thank you for having a very insightful discussion.